Hi, everyone. Right now, we're going to talk about the United States entering World War One. So we just learned about the reasons for, and now we're going to learn about the actual process of getting into World War One. So we're going to learn about Wilson's idealism. We're going to learn about the state of the United States military and what had to be done, what government agencies had to be created in order to manage that. We're going to learn a little bit more about the political philosophy and some other actions that needed to take place. We've gone over propaganda pretty well, but I think you'll be able to figure that out. And then we'll probably end it with a little bit we'll probably end it here, how to pay for the war. So that's what we'll be looking at over the next couple of minutes. All right, so this idea of idealism. Idealism is references a country's philosophy of foreign policy. The definition is, in foreign policy, a state should make its internal political philosophy the philosophy of the goal of its foreign policy. So what I just stumbled over means that Wilson generally believed that America should be free. Wilson generally believed that it should be a democratic society where people are able to fully embrace the pursuit of happiness. And so those were the goals he would project outward into the world and use those ideals as justifications for us going into war. In other words, giving us a good moral reason. So Wilson sincerely wanted to never have another war again. And there's an argument to be made that if the world had listened to him, World War II may have not happened at all, or at least been significantly different. This term, make the world safe for democracy, has been used over and over and over by presidents ever since Wilson. And we're going to look, especially one of our RHAs today is going to be Wilson's Peace Without Victory speech. And you're definitely going to be able to identify the ideals that he's projecting in that particular speech. More on that tomorrow, but I will say that it's one of the most powerful speeches delivered by a president. But let's not forget, Wilson was not perfect. Remember iron-jawed angels. He was very reluctant to give women the vote, and he was very much a product of the South, so he wasn't terribly enlightened on racial issues. More on that in a bit. Okay, so Wilson finally decides he's got to make a move and take action. So the process is put into place. He requests a war declaration from Congress, but this is what they're looking at. The U.S. Army was in no way, shape, or form ready to go to war. We had about 70,000 active men. I know this says 1914, but we didn't expand the war. Why would you build your army if you're going to be neutral, right? So we had about 70,000 men. France had 1.2 million. Germany had over 2 million people in their army. So one, you've got to figure out how to get all of those people into the army. The other thing is you have to feed them, you have to equip them, you have to shelter them. The entire military infrastructure was just not there. So Wilson has to create a couple of government agencies to address those pressing problems that have solely to do with the Army. So Wilson creates the War Industries Board. And generally speaking, what that board is able to do is coordinate resources, and it's given special powers that prioritize creating equipment and supplies for the new military. So a lot of new military camps are developed. Factories are built or converted make arms, helmets, shoes, all kinds of things. And industries completely revolve around making anything to do with arms, manufacturing, shells for artillery pieces. So we had to go to what's called total war. The entire economy was adjusted to accommodate the needs of sending what eventually would be about almost 5 million men to war. All right. So April 1917, we finally declare war. Congress declared war. And we'll talk about this quote tomorrow. But the public was very enthusiastic. And the propaganda, which you're very familiar with now, starts to get produced. And in order to advertise the war and keep public sentiment in favor of it, Wilson creates the Committee of Public Information, and that was basically the propaganda wing of the United States government. They created billboards, they created flyers, advertisements, any way they could get out the word and keep influencing people about supporting the war. But despite the enthusiasm of the public, because don't forget they were pretty mad at Germany for the Zimmermann Note and then unrestricted submarine warfare. Initially, only 73,000 men enlisted. So if you add that to the original 73,000 people, that's only about 146,000, and they need 1 million people. So they're quite a bit short. So the Selective Service Act is passed. In other words, all men, eventually it became all men between the ages of 18 to 45 had to register for the draft. And what that means is you basically enter a lottery. And if your number gets called, lucky you, you get to go into the military. So once the draft is initiated, that 10 million men register for it. And one of the reasons why all of a sudden 10,000 people register, 10 million register for the draft is because there are legal consequences. Back then, there was a big legal consequence. Now there still is. Guys, you still have to register for the draft once you turn 18. I think there is a provision on the books where it says you can incur a huge fine and a 5-year jail sentence. I think it would be very unlikely anyone's going to go into prison for that. But it's funny. It's something that's still around today that we have to do. But there were significant legal consequences and, for lack of a better word, peer pressure for people to join in the military. And you can see a great example of propaganda here. And so we were also helping to provide food and money to the British allies who we joined. And, that's basically what we brought to the table. The Germans and the British were fighting to the point where their resources were depleted, and all of a sudden we have basically unlimited resources that we can throw on the side of the British. However, you can't just snap your fingers and make it happen. So on the home front, what we had to do to supplement our nutritional needs was this thing called victory gardens were created. And that was also brought back in World War II. People were encouraged to basically put a garden in their yard. There were entire advertising campaigns that grew up around it. And, the thought was that if you can grow a lot of your own food, that means a lot of other food can be sent to troops and overseas and all that. So once again, another government agency is created, the Food Administration Board, the FAB, is used to regulate and coordinate and direct food where it needs to go. Because you've got to turn the entire agricultural system of the country into one system, and it needs to be coordinated. And so the Lever Act of 1917 gives the Food Administration Board full control over food production and distribution. In other words, they can tell farmers now, this is what you're going to grow, and this is where it's going to go. And then, of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and there's certainly no such thing as a free free war. War is very expensive. And of course, when things get expensive, the government has to turn to, of course, taxes. So there was an increase in several different types of taxes. Suffice it to say, it became a little bit more expensive to live in the United States of America. But generally speaking, as taxes go, people got it. Then, of course, bonds were sold. A bond is an investment vehicle. Basically, the way it would work is if you gave me $50 and you waited 15 years, I would give you back $100. That's why people would buy bonds, and bonds can be issued by the government for a specific purpose. So in this case, it was to support the bonds, and that's why they were called Liberty bonds. And so donations from all national sectors, people from all different types of companies, agricultural, manufacturing sector, real estate sector, all of it, all of that money was mobilized to be sent into the government so that it could be used for the war effort. And I think that's about it. I think we can leave this part of it here. So just to recap, geez, there was one thing that I'm trying to think of, and I can't remember what the heck it was. Oh well, we can leave it at that. So today in class, we're going to be going over the RHA. So take a look at this, and I will stop talking now. So see you later on.